Hello, I'm Beth Whitaker, and welcome to Artmaker Farm, Cultivating Creativity, based on Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. In this episode, our goal is to develop the capacity to make our own inner world safe for us to experiment and grow and learn about our creativity. Just like a gardener would choose the right spot and make sure the ground is nourished, the light is correct, and the water is close by, we're going to be creating a place within ourselves so that we can feel safe, that what we're doing is going to thrive. And as an example of how we do develop that type of environment for ourselves, I'll explain to you the conditions for my filming in the previous episode. It was an introduction, and I have absolutely no comfort level in front of the camera. So I wanted to have that because I think my message is very important. But I had to go back to that moment in my life where I could have been comfortable in front of inanimate objects like a camera. And I was reminded of seeing my daughter play with her stuffed animals and how when she was very little, they had a life of their own. And so by pulling off my own memories of imaginative play, I used my daughter's stuffed animals to talk to. They were my audience, and occasionally I would make eye contact, especially with the tiger, but also with what was Pink Teddy. And I felt comfortable, I felt connected. I was cautioned ahead of time, perhaps that's not such a good idea. People are going to wonder what's going on with that. And I really had to say to myself, is it important for me to get approval from everyone? No. And I did have some people ask me about it. And because I was sure about what I was doing, I feel fine. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to be sure that where you are when you're discovering your creativity is where you should be. You're going to be creating your internal support system. All right? So how are we going to do that? Part of the discovery will be enhanced and supported if you can do these exercises with a group of trusted friends. Not only are we building a connection within ourselves, but we can use that to connect with others. And so I highly recommend, if you can do this with someone that you trust and that you can have fun with, please do that. One of the things that I can help you understand what this journey will be like. Not only did I explain my coming to terms with being in front of this camera by using childhood toys, I'm going to ask you now to close your eyes and imagine something that you want to know more about. You've seen perhaps a ceramic bowl that a friend made. Close your eyes and imagine it. Or maybe you went shopping and you saw a wonderful leather bag. Get that image in your mind. And now get close enough to it that you can discover if it has an odor. Smell it. Touch it. Is it rough? Is it smooth? Is it cool? Now pick it up. Is it heavy? Shake it. Does it make a noise? Okay, all of these things are what we did when we were a child because we felt safe. We couldn't do wrong. We didn't know what wrong was. We were just finding out about what the world was about. We were curious. We were interested. We wanted to discover. And that's where we're going. We're going back to that young child that's in us, that was curious, and it wasn't even bravery at that point. That was just, what life is. Life is out there to learn about. And that's where we're going to go back. But we have to feel safe. We have to feel like we're not doing anything wrong. We're not being bad. That our curiosity is our driver, and it's strong, and it's there, and it's helping us learn how to survive, if you will. It's pulling the information about the world inside so that we can make sense of it. We can unfortunately lose that sense of adventure when other people say to us, pay attention to this. Don't go over there and whatever, tip over that vase. Come over here and stack these blocks. Now, yes, some of it is built in safety measures, but by being distracted from finding out what happens when you tip over that vase, we don't know about it. We can only assume from what we're told would happen. And we lose a sense of our curiosity. We lose a sense of finding out about things and creating our own stories. One of the things that happen for us when we lose a connection with our creativity, and we think that maybe it doesn't have any value, and maybe all it is a distraction from what's really important, is we end up sometimes becoming what's called shadow artists. And shadow artists are those of us who are frustrated in expressing our creativity, but we get close enough to it so that it's still part of our lives. And these can be art collectors, these can be artist representatives, editors, critics, reviewers. And in the course of doing this program, I discovered that I was a shadow artist. I had loved to draw and paint and make art. And when I went to school, I was learning how to do it in so many different ways. But when I went to look for a job, I realized that for many reasons, I wouldn't have been hired as an artist. And I had to make a decision. Was I going to be an artist making my art, or was I going to make a living in art? And who knows what would have happened if I had chosen just to be an artist. But to make a living in art, I went into publishing, eventually becoming an art director, where I hired people to make art for me. And it was illustration, photography. I also pulled a lot of descriptive art from the archives in American history. It was American Heritage Magazine, so there was a wonderful cache of art to illustrate stories. And I was thrilled with it. I loved it. It was like the world was open to me through this job. But at the same time, there was an edge of me that was like frustrated that I wasn't making my own art. So as we learn how to reconnect with our creativity, we will have to go inside, not only create the safe place, but we're going to have to heal the wounds that we received in those moments when we were perhaps criticized for having our own creativity. And we're going to need to understand that we don't need to get things right. There is no right. We have to give ourselves permission to make mistakes, to not judge ourselves as being not as good as we think we should be. As an example, there's no judgment in this process. There is just the process of reconnecting and being that curious child again, and learning and loving. One of the biggest blocks to people entering this program and doing the exercises in the artist's way is the fear that of the unknown. Who is that creative child in me? What part of me haven't I expressed that's going to change who I am? And maybe I'm okay the way I am. Maybe I don't need creativity in my life. So that's a block. We all need creativity in order to survive. Everything that we do is motivated by things that we've learned and understand about our world. And we need to reconnect and give ourselves permission to be who we are. Some of the negative beliefs that we have that could stop us from doing this program, and you have to recognize them, are things like, maybe I'll go crazy, or people are gonna hate me. All of those are negative beliefs, and beliefs are not facts. Fears are not facts. We will be understanding that what we tell ourselves can be good, it can be growth-oriented, or it could paralyze us. And in the journey to reconnect with your creativity, the blocks that will keep you paralyzed are what we need to learn about. We need to go closer to those blocks, and we need to understand what they are in order to assure them that everything will be fine. Part of what we'll learn this week are using affirmations to help look at our blocks. Now, you could have a block that you shouldn't try to change and become more creative because, you're too old. And that's a block. And an affirmation would be, well, either I can continue to get old and be more creative, or I can just continue to get old. One of the fears that keeps a lot of people from doing the exercises and tasks in the artist's way is that they're afraid of what would happen when they become more creative. What's going to happen to the me I know if I do these exercises and I grow and I change? Will I go crazy? Will I only have one thing creative and then go dumb? Will people hate me? Will my life change in a way that will hurt me? And these are all negative thoughts, negative self-undermining fears and possibly beliefs that will keep you from growing into your creativity. You can address them with what's called affirmations. And affirmations are things like, I am good enough. I do have everything I need. I'm not too old. Those are affirmations that you will learn how to use to fight the undermining doubts that might creep up during this process. By shifting our connection with the world around us and the self that's inside us, we can shift how our life, the trajectory of our life, how our life is lived. We can become more creative without undermining our safety. We are building this from a place of safety. We are not judging, we are not criticizing, we're not restricting ourselves, as long as we keep our fears and our negative self-talk in check. So the negative self-talk is called blurts. Julia Cameron has a number of different examples of what a blurt is. And a blurt could be something like, I'm not good enough. Mrs. Taylor in second grade said that my tree didn't look like a tree, that I had to start over and keep trying, and I wasn't good enough. And that's a blurt. That's a negative belief that we have about ourselves, that we're not good enough. And an affirmation could be, I was in second grade, and that was the first tree I ever drew, so maybe I can learn how to draw a tree. Not just maybe, I know I can. We have to give ourselves permission, again, to make mistakes in order to grow at all. Making a mistake is learning. If you do something and you don't like it, you don't stop. You do it again until you do like it. And that's what the growth process in our creativity will allow us to not judge what we do. A lot of the work that we'll be doing will feel like play. And that's one of the wonderful things about growing into your creativity, because it is play. Now I'd like to talk with you a little bit about the tasks that we'll be doing. I mentioned a couple in the first episode, and I'd like to reiterate those. But also, you'll need to get 2 notebooks. One of them will be for the morning pages. Every morning, you're going to be sitting down and writing, stream of conscience. Start, don't stop, finish when the 3rd page is done. And what you will not be doing is editing, trying to control, think, just let it come out. Don't edit it, don't do anything with it, just write it. And what that is it's a stream of connection with what's inside you, your voice, your creative partner. And it wants to talk, it wants to be noticed, it wants to be recognized. And the morning pages are a critical part of the artist's way in connecting with what's going on inside. The artist's date is an opportunity for you within the next week, and actually every week, because this is something you'll want to continue doing throughout the program and beyond, is called the artist's date. The artist's date is when you get alone with yourself. You do something that makes you feel excited and interested, and you do it alone. You don't have anybody with you, anything with you. Your goal is to what's called fill the well, your creative well. Whereas the morning pages was getting out, the artist's date is putting in. And it's the influences and moments, colors, textures, whatever gets you excited about the world comes in. You could take a walk, you could go to a yarn shop, you could do something really kind of crazy. Like my first artist date was at home, and I will show you what I did with a drippy candle. So I was able to find some of these candles. They're drippy candles, and there's got a whole bunch of colors inside of them when they melt. And you know, you're not supposed to really play with them, but I did. And I did this. This was an old figurine that I didn't want to keep for any reason. So I put a candle in it and I started to play with, with the wax that was coming down from the flame. And then I saw that it wasn't dripping enough for me, so I got some crayons and I melted it into the candle. So this was my creative moment, my artist date. Is it something that's going to go into a museum? No, not even the Beth Whitaker Museum. But it was fun, and I discovered a lot of things about melting crayons. And I discovered that it's okay to do something that you don't necessarily want to go into a museum, but I learned from it. And that's what the artist dates are all about. The artist dates are about learning what gets you excited and making note of it and keeping it in your resources inside. Because you never know when you're going to want to pull out something like melting wax. So the artist's date is an opportunity to open your eyes and open your heart. And even if it's familiar, learn. We have 2 resources for our creativity. One of them comes from our family, our culture, our habitat. And the other comes from our knowledge, our imagination, our attention. And the artist dates are all about that second type of resource. It's what we are interested in and we want to pay attention to and we want to have as a resource for our creativity. One of the first tasks we'll be asked to do is make a list of 3 enemies of your self-worth. It could be a friend who actually said something like, well, that's stupid, don't draw that tree again. It could be, you have your own, I had mine. And so you make a list of the first 3 that you remember that made you feel bad about who you are. Take one of the incidents that you remember and write about it. Write an essay. Write as much as you can that you remember about where you were, how old were you, what was said, how did you feel. And then choose that person to write a letter to and use the voice of the child that you were. As an example of what you can do is if you were like 4 years old, 5 years old, and somebody said something to you that made you feel bad, the letter that you would write would be like, "You're such a poopy head. I am not a bad artist." Or whatever that voice is, write it out, and then take that letter and mail it to somebody, mail it to the person. Maybe you don't have their address, it doesn't matter. Put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, put their name on it, and put it in the mail. Or tear it up and burn it, whatever it takes. Part of what you'll be doing with this is resolving that issue and putting it in context. The next thing you'll be doing is making a list of 3 champions of your self-worth, people that made you feel good and proud of what you were and what you were doing. Choose one of those 3 and write it out. Give yourself the details that you have of that incident. And then write a thank you note to that person. And again, if that person is still alive, you could send it to them. If not, don't put an address, still put it in the mail. And really thank them in the way that they helped you to stay connected with who you are. I had a memory of my older brother Gilbert coloring in the coloring book when, I don't know, maybe I was 4 or 5, and I was just learning how to color in coloring books and staying in the lines. But my brother, who is 2 years older than I, had started to shade within the areas of the coloring book. Like he would go from a red to a blue within the boundaries of that section of the coloring book, and I was fascinated by that. And I asked him about it, and I remember him showing it to me, how he did it. And I called him when I had that memory, and I thanked him for it. And we talked a little bit about his creative journey and how, you know, there were some incidents for him that turned him away from making a career and a livelihood with his creativity. And, you know, it's important to have those people, recognize them. Another exercise you'll do is write a list of 5 alternative lives that you would have liked to have lived. And it could be anything. You could have wanted to be a sailor. You could have wanted to be a veterinarian, perhaps, or doctor, or chef, whatever it is, 5 lives that you would have liked to also have lived. Take pieces of those lives and try to incorporate the activities relating to them in the next week. Choose one of them specifically and see if you can do something big to incorporate it. Like, say you would have wanted to be a country singer, so call up a guitar teacher, arrange to take a lesson. If you would have wanted to be a veterinarian, perhaps volunteer for an afternoon at an animal shelter. Make it part of your awareness. The trick is to make sure that you have fun, but also be aware that blurts can creep in and steal your sense of adventure by trying to undermine it. Blurts are going to get stronger as you do, and be aware that you're hearing a voice of somebody that's on your monster list that tried to undermine your creative expression. And be aware of it and turn to it and say, don't worry, I'm okay, I can handle this. The final exercise for this first episode is what Julia Cameron now has written a whole book about, and that's to take a walk. Take a 20-minute brisk walk, doing something to get your heart rate up, to get you energized, to get you feeling more alive. And like I said, she's written a whole book about this, and hopefully I will be going through those exercises myself soon. But just to get energized and get out and take a walk. 20 minutes. All right, that's it for week 1, recovering a sense of safety. I look forward to having you join me for the next episode, which would be discovering a sense, or recovering a sense of identity. Now, just remember, this is supposed to be play, but it's also work. So you need to be brave, be curious, and have fun.